All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, with the expanded postseason here in Major League Baseball, who's going to survive in advance and get to the divisional round? Now, earlier this evening, I talked about the American League wildcard picture. And now I'm going to be talking about the National League wildcard picture. And I really think overall this season that the National League playoff picture is very interesting because of these six teams, I could see either one of these six teams getting hot over the next couple of weeks and getting to the postseason. I mean, getting to the World Series and even possibly winning it. But I want to focus tonight on the National League wildcard picture. And first and foremost, you're going to have the sixth seed Philadelphia Phillies out of the National League East, clashing with the third seed St. Louis Cardinals, the champions of the National League Central. And for Philadelphia, their postseason drought is over. I mean, you go back to 2011 to find the last time that the Phillies made the postseason. That year, they won 102 games, and they were still high off of the momentum, if you will, from winning the World Series in 2008. They got close for the next couple of years, but then after that 2011 campaign, that team just got old and this franchise went into its tailspin. But nonetheless, the Phillies are back. They rallied after firing manager Joe Girardi mid-season, and this is a Phillies team that could do some damage here in the postseason. You look at their lineup, and you have Bryce Harper, and Bryce Harper is a guy that made the playoffs several times in his career with the Washington Nationals, and of course, when he signed with Philly a couple of years ago, he was expected to be that guy. He's put in some solid work, but he just has been unable to help Philadelphia elevate to the postseason until this year. Kyle Schwarber, he's a guy that's going to hit a lot of home runs. 46 of them this year to lead the National League. Had 94 runs batted in. And typically, when you think of a guy who has hit as many home runs as Schwarber did, you think he's going to have more RBIs. But, he was batting leadoff a lot, which is due to analytics. And he's a guy that doesn't hit for average as much as you'd want him to. So with that said, it's really feast or famine with him. But again, he's in the postseason once again. Was there last year with Boston, and of course, he was a part of that Chicago Cubs team that won it all back in 2016. But nonetheless, you look at the talent in this Philly lineup. You got Bryce Harper. I talked about Schwarber. You got JT Realmuto. You have Reese Hoskins, and you have Gene Segura. So there's definitely talent in this Philly lineup to make things happen. The Phillies pitching. Zach Wheeler is going to get the ball in game number one tomorrow afternoon for Philadelphia. And then it's going to be Aaron Nola in game two. So, I mean, there's definitely talent in this Philadelphia lineup, but or this pitching staff as well. But it's one of those where it can really be hit or miss as far as what the Phillies can do with their pitching. One thing that is a big question mark for Philadelphia heading into the postseason, their bullpen. Their bullpen has been very shaky at times throughout in the regular season, and it could once again be an Achilles heel for Philadelphia here in the playoffs. Also, something to keep an eye on for the Phillies is defensive miscues. I mean, sometimes they just really bite this team in the backside and really get them at the most inopportune times. And you have a very fundamentally sound team like the St. Louis Cardinals that you're going up against. You don't want to give them extra opportunities when they are at bat. I'm talking about these Cardinals. They're very hot right now. The Cardinals were neck and neck with the Brewers for quite some time in the National League Central. And then they just blew this thing open. They got hot coming down the stretch. And, this is typically the time of the year where the St. Louis Cardinals shine their best. This is a team that is consistently in the mix to make the postseason. And when the Cardinals get there, they are always a tough out. And I think that's going to once again be the case this year. You look at this lineup, Albert Pujols, he's trying to go out with a bang, and he's done that so far. He got the 700 home runs this year. But then aside from Fat Albert in this lineup, you got Nolan Arenado, who is swinging a great bat for St. Louis. Paul Goldschmidt, who is an MVP candidate. And another guy to keep an eye out for is going to be uh, Tommy Edman. Now you look at Jose Quintana; he's going to get the ball tomorrow for game number one for St. Louis. But then you look at some of these veteran pitchers on this staff. Miles Mikolas is penciled in as the game two starter. Nobody for game three as of yet. If this series goes there for St. Louis, my money is maybe Adam Wainwright. The veteran gets the ball right there, or somebody else that you could look at is possibly Jordan Montgomery. You look at what Montgomery has been since he came over from the New York Yankees, and he has been a tremendous asset to this Cardinals rotation. And I think he will not shy away from the postseason moment. You look at this and you say, who has the edge? Obviously, the experience goes with St. Louis. They've kind of been there and done that, and they're consistent with it. But to me, I think St. Louis is the more fundamentally sound team in all three aspects of the game. I love the way that the Cardinals are playing right now. And because of that, I am going to take the Redbirds to advance to the divisional round. Now, the other wild card series in the National League that will have a lot of people talking, you're going to have the fifth seed San Diego Padres out of the National League West taking on the New York Mets, the fourth seed out of the National League East. And make no mistake about it, Citi Field will definitely be electric tomorrow night for game number one. You have a Mets fan base that has been waiting since 2016 to see postseason play. On top of that, you have excuse me, in Steve Cohen that has promised to build a contender. And in just his second full year as team owner of the New York Mets, this team is in the postseason. But getting back to the task at hand for both of these clubs, the Padres themselves ended a long postseason drought, which dates back to 2006. But for both of these clubs, which offense is going to get it going? Because at times, both of these teams can come out swinging the bats like gangbusters, but also both of them have had a propensity to go into a funk. You look at Manny Machado, he's been steady Eddie in this Padres lineup all season long, but one guy you definitely want to keep an eye on is Juan Soto. Juan Soto has not had a good year at the plate, first with the Washington Nationals and now with the Padres, but he is a guy that when he's on the postseason stage, he knows how to shine. And the New York Mets know about what Soto can do with his bat, consistently going up against them from his time with the Nationals. Now, also for the San Diego Padres, you look at their pitching. You got Yu Darvish, who's going to get the ball tomorrow night for San Diego. More than likely, I can expect Sean Manaea in game number two for the series. Actually, excuse me, it's going to be Blake Snell. But with that said, Sean Manaea will probably get the ball for game number three if it goes that far. But nonetheless, you Darvish, what the Mets have to do with him, they got to get to him early because if you allow a guy like Darvish to really, get settled in on that mound, he could shut down this Mets lineup. So I think it's going to be very important for them to do that early. And on the flip side, I think it's important for the Padres to do it as well because the Mets got Max Scherzer going tomorrow night. And of course, Scherzer was the big free agent for the Mets this past offseason. And this is why you bring a guy of his caliber in if you are New York for these specific moments. Now, Scherzer's last outing last weekend against the Atlanta Braves was not something to write home about. And typically, when you have veteran pitchers, quality veteran pitchers like Max Scherzer, they tend not to go out there and have back-to-back bad startings, especially in key moments such as these. Now, the Mets are in the wild card, but they won 101 games this year, tied with the Braves for the best record in the East. The Braves do get the tiebreaker, but nonetheless, this is a Mets team that I feel like they have something to prove. They finished on a strong note after getting swept by the Braves. Their bats got going in a three-game set with the Washington Nationals at home, and they got to find a way to keep that momentum going. I think one of the best things for the Mets heading into this series, number one, they don't have to travel. Number two, they only had one day off. And I say that because when you have the momentum, the type of momentum that they had after that national series, and an additional time off could really, mess with that chemistry, if you will. So I think that's important for this club. I talked about Max Scherzer going for game number one. Buck Showalter has been mum as far as who's going to get the bump in game number two. Is it going to be Jacob DeGrom? Is it going to be Chris Bassett? We'll have to wait and see. But this Mets bullpen has been solid throughout the season. Edwin Diaz has picked the right time to have a career year as he's heading into free agency, and he's going to have to step up big in this series if the Mets are going to advance. Now, you look at this lineup, you got the likes of Pete Alonso and Francisco Lindor, two of the big names that you think about with this club. Neither one of them had a good series last week against the Braves, but this Mets team as a whole got back on track against Washington. And hopefully, for their sake, that series with the Nats was the elixir to get them going again. But you have Jeff McNeil, the NL batting champion this year. Pete Alonso is a guy that, he can get going, but it's also about the guys around him. Frankie Lindor, he's been on the postseason stage with Cleveland. Brandon Nimmo, what's he going to do in his first time in the postseason? You got Eddie Escobar, who is another free agent signing for the Mets in the offseason. And, he started swinging a hot bat coming down the stretch. He's been solid with his glove in the field all season long. And he's probably going to have some key moments at the plate in this series for the Amazons. Also, somebody to keep an eye on. Another first year Met, and Mark Canha came over to this team from Oakland. And these are the guys that are going to have to go out there and make up for the absence of a Starling Marte. Now, Marte has been injured for the past couple of weeks, but we really saw the impact of his absence last week in the series sweep against the Atlanta Braves. So, it's basically all hands on deck for all teams at this point of the year. So it's going to have to be an Herculean effort, if you will, for the Mets to go out there and get past a very good San Diego team. Buck Showalter against Bob Melvin. You're talking about the two managers for both of these clubs. A lot of postseason experience from both of these skippers. They know their X's and O's, and they're definitely going to have their respective clubs ready to go tomorrow night in game number one. Who has the edge? Obviously, the home field advantage goes to the Mets. This fan base is going to be rabid tomorrow night. So, therefore, I think it's important for the Mets to go out there and do something early to get this fan base going, because that New York fan base, we've seen it regardless of the sport. Their fans are very intense and they want to go out there. They feel like they're part of the game. Doesn't matter if it's the Yankees, Mets, Islanders, Rangers, Giants, you name it. I can go right down the list. The Knicks, like, their fans are really intense into the game. So with that said, I think it's important for the Mets to go out there and make an impact early and put the stress on the Padres. But I think when it's all said and done, I think the Mets are going to take care of business in this series. It's not going to be pretty because San Diego is a very good team, but nonetheless, I think the Mets have what it takes to advance. So when it's all said and done, I think the Cards win, and I'm also going to take the Mets to advance to the National League Divisional Series. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I am signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.